Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to PC101. My name is Chris, and today joining me we have,
Keelan.
and we are going to talk to you guys a little bit more today about the Jared Goff Matthew Stafford trade that went down a couple of days ago. So, Keelan, for the fifth time because we've had such stupid computer glitches again, uh, would you like to explain your thoughts on what you first thought of when you saw the Jared Goff coming back in the deal, as well as what the Rams are going to be doing with Stafford and the picks that they had to give up?
Sure. Yeah. Well, basically, to sum it up, because I don't feel like saying this for the 5 billionth time, I was just sitting there. I got the notification from many different media sources, and um, basically, I was really shocked because I knew he was going to get traded. Stafford was going to get traded. I had a pretty good feeling that it was going to happen before the Super Bowl. What really shocked me was the capital the Lions got in return for Stafford. We got, that the two first round picks really shocked me, as well as we got a third round pick and a starting quarterback in Jared Goff. So my thoughts on that were I was extremely excited from the moment that we, got that final offer, or we got that final, not offer, but the what we finally figured out what was in the package for Stafford. And I really like Jared Goff. I've always thought he was a talented quarterback. And obviously Matthew Stafford's I'm pretty sure objectively better as a quarterback, which is why the Rams gave up so much for him. They're in their Super Bowl window, and they got the veteran quarterback who can really lead them to a Super Bowl. But I thought they gave up a lot. Whether it'll be worth it or not will really tell with time. But I think the Lions got a haul of a package for Stafford, and I'm really excited because we don't really have to target a quarterback, at least this year, maybe not even next year. We'll be able to strictly focus on really drafting best player available and making the talent on the team around Goff better, rather than replacing our quarterback, which is what's gotten me extremely excited.
Nice. So the first thing I have up here to talk a little bit about is PFF actually has Goff as the 10th highest WAR quarterback over the last 4 years. They give Jared Goff as essentially responsible for almost 8 wins over the last 4 years by himself at 7.91. That's a pretty good number. That's 10th among, I'm assuming there's not going to be many other players in the league that are that high, at least higher than the 10th best quarterback. So we're talking basically the 10th best or the 10th most valuable player in the league. Coincidentally, Stafford is actually slightly lower at 12th at 717. But
Also been hurt.
right, exactly. So there's that element and the injuries and the decline in play when he's been trying to fight through injuries and all those types of things. Of course, the Matt Patricia era where we've just in general lost more games than we've won has also been a factor there too. So
Yep.
Stafford probably more responsible for a greater percentage of wins than Jared Goff is. But if Goff is responsible for about 8 wins out of his, let me pull this up. Over the last 4 years, he's won 42 games. So 8 over 42 is like what, 20%? 8, 16, 24,
Yep.
32, 40. Yeah, so probably about 20 to 20, well, not 25. Probably about 20% of their wins are largely because of Jared Goff, or at least that's what PFF's analytics would suggest. So, very interesting to kind of see how much they value Jared Goff and his ability to contribute to a winning football team. And they're also relatively high on him in terms of their grade as well. I believe they have him in the 70s each of the last 4 years as well, and most likely higher than that in 2018 and 19. So, what are your thoughts on Jared Goff's contributions to the Rams' playoff runs and ability to not just get to the playoffs, but as well as win 3 games in the playoffs as well?
He was a key piece to the Rams in their Super Bowl run. Obviously, they came up short, but he was really a terrific quarterback up until that Super Bowl game. And he really was the guy that led them to the Super Bowl. So I think he was a very valuable and important piece to that team. Probably the second. Probably. I don't know where I would place him. I would say he's probably the second best player on that Rams team when they went to the Super Bowl, behind Aaron Donald. And I think he was just a really key piece to that. And I don't think they would have gone there without him.
Yeah, and so another element to Jared Goff's game that is pretty heavily criticized is his deep passing. So, taking a look at his deep ball, Matthew Stafford obviously elite in that area, but Jared Goff was not as bad, I don't think, as people make him out to be. On passes of 20 plus, going back to last year, so just 19 and 20, not including 17 to 18 when he was even better throwing down the field. He had 1,011 yards and 9.3 yards per attempt average on passes of 20 plus, including 77.6 grade on those passes from PFF. So a little bit higher turnover rate than you'd probably like to see. He has more interceptions than touchdowns on those plays. But still very interesting to see that his ability to throw the ball down the field, while not as good as it was in 17 to 18, is also not exactly as bad as some may make it out to be with that 78 almost PFF score. Meanwhile, since 2017, so since Jared Goff's, that includes Goff's 2 best years, you have 44 big time throws compared to Stafford's 57, 45 turnover-worthy plays compared to Stafford's 26. But remember, again, Stafford's been hurt, so some of those volume stats are going to be a little bit higher for Goff. A 94.7 rating for Stafford compared to 85.8 for Goff. 47 turnovers compared to 24 for Stafford, and 1,081 pressures for Stafford compared to 1,049 for Goff. So basically, moral of the story here, Jared Goff has played in more games, he's thrown more turnovers, he's thrown more bad passes because he's played more games. And at the same time, he's also not making as many big time throws, as they're called. So, what do you think about Jared Goff's ability to maybe not be the guy like Stafford, but still be a contributing part of the puzzle?
Sure, yeah. I mean, obviously the quarterback is always going to be the contributing part of the puzzle, whether that's good or bad. But I believe that Goff can really make a difference, and with the right team around him, can be the quarterback that leads the Lions to the playoffs. Obviously, getting the right team around him has been easier said than done, as been shown over the last long time. But he's definitely a capable quarterback. No one's going to argue and say he's better than Matthew Stafford.
Right.
But he's still a very much capable quarterback who can win us some games that really help us compete in the long run.
Yeah, so I think that this is probably the most accurate representation in terms of PFF score, while the War is going to naturally value Goff because he's played more, and the efficiency stats are generally speaking going to value Stafford because he's played a little bit less. Passing grade is a pretty natural, even indicator. And in terms of just pure passing grades, since 2017, Matthew Stafford is 10th at an 84.7, and Jared Goff is 13th at an 81.6. So that's a little bit lower than I have Stafford myself, and it's also a little bit lower than I have Goff myself as well. But the difference between them, I think, is pretty fair, and they're also about in the right tier of quarterback. I would say Stafford's top 10 and Goff is just outside of it. What are your thoughts on the passing grade element? Do you agree that that would be a pretty fair comparison between the two and their difference in talent?
Yeah, I think so, because I think, well, obviously Stafford's more of a, well, clearly Stafford's a better player. I think it's pretty clear that I think that's a pretty good representation of the differences between them. And they're both different types of players. Obviously, Stafford's that kind of, I don't want to say, he's a gunslinger of sorts. He doesn't throw a lot of touch. Where Goff is more that quote-unquote game manager. And that's where the differences truly lie. So it's hard to clearly evaluate because they're two completely different players. But I think that's an accurate representation of how kind of far off the two are from each other.
Cool. So yeah, another thing I kind of wanted to go over too as part of this video is a little bit more of the comparison between what Goff is leaving in LA and what he's going to be coming to in Detroit. So from a talent perspective, he's kind of got a little bit of an unknown right now at the wide receiver spots. Lions had to add at least 3 wide receivers this offseason, whether it be in the draft or for agency or maybe even trade. So we do have a lot of work to do at the wide receiver spot. But I do think personally that DeAndre Swift is better than any running back that he's had, with the possible exception of Gurley as a runner. I think that Gurley's probably a little bit better of a runner than DeAndre Swift is. But Swift is a better receiving back than Gurley was, and Swift is a better running back than anyone else that Goff has had over the last 2 years, or C.J. Anderson. And then I also believe that T.J. Hawkinson is going to be a better tight end for him than Gerald Everett or Tyler Higbee, and that's nothing against Everett or Higbee. I think I have both guys in my top 10, or at least Higbee. What are your thoughts on the difference in surrounding talent and supporting cast? And of course, the offensive line here, I would personally argue is probably a little bit more stable. We've had some injury issues the last year or two, but with the talent aspect, I'd say Decker is probably better than any of their left tackles. Frank Ragnow is probably better than any of their centers. Jonah Jackson is probably at the same level, at the very least, not much worse than any of their guards. And Tyrell Crosby is probably not too far behind Rob Havenstein. So, your thoughts on the offensive line comparison, as well as the tight end and running back comparison? Of course, it's kind of hard to say about wide receiver, but just those two position groups.
Obviously, the receiver position is obviously unknown, as the best receiver under contract on the Lions is Quintez Cephas.
Yep.
But in terms of tight ends, I completely agree with your evaluation there. I think T.J. Hawkinson's a pretty clear top 5 tight end in my opinion, and he's much. Obviously, I like Higbee and Everett. I think they're both talented tight ends, but Hawkinson's an elite tight end, and he's fantastic. And as we move to the running backs, I like Swift. He's still kind of an unknown to me because we haven't seen a lot out of him in the NFL just yet. But obviously, Gurley's the clear number one in my opinion because, I mean, that guy won Offensive Player of the Year for a reason. He was absolutely dominant for like the first few years of his career.
So is Gurley as good of a receiver as DeAndre Swift is?
Probably not. No, I don't think he's as good as a receiver. But I think when he was in his prime, he was a much better runner. And like Swift is a great player, but a lot of him is unknown right now. We don't know too much about what he's going to do in the NFL. We haven't seen a huge sample size. But based on what we know about him from college, from his first year, I think Swift is probably the second best running back Goff will have ever had. But he has a lot of work to do to become that type of elite running back. But Goff probably wants to maximize his skill set.
And the offensive line?
Oh, my apologies. Yeah, the offensive line, as Andrew Whitworth is almost 40, but I think him and Decker are probably pretty similar at this point. I would have Havenstein over Tyrell Crosby pretty significantly. The guards, I'm not too familiar with the Rams guards. I'm pretty sure they're probably around the same level, and I think Ragnow is clearly better than, I think, Austin Blythe, who's the Rams center. So I think the offensive lines are pretty equal. I think I would give a slight nod to the Lions, but not by much.
So I just think it's very interesting to kind of compare and contrast the two different situations. Because everyone's talking about, like, oh yeah, like he had McVay and he had like a great cast of like Cooks and Watkins and Cup and Everett and Higby and all these guys, and he had like a top half offensive line and everything else, and he's basically been the McVay system in a way, kind of generally speaking, caters to his strengths and this and that. And I really don't see a reason why we wouldn't be able to do the same thing. Now, obviously, Anthony Lynn isn't Sean McVay, or he'd still be in LA himself. But
if I may,
Mhm.
we listened to, well, at least I did, and I know you did. We listened to the Dan Campbell presser, and he talked about his philosophy, and his philosophy is catering to his players' strengths and creating good matchups against other teams' flaws. And I think that's pretty clear that I think for year one, we're going to build that offense around what Jared Goff is his strength. We're going to cater that offense for him and, build that, that kind of West Coast play action, short, intermediate passes for the most part. So I don't think it's really fair to assume that his scheme is going to completely change because really this entire Dan Campbell, we don't know much about Dan Campbell as a coach. He was an intern with the Dolphins, but he was never a play caller or never anything like that. And obviously we know what we're getting from Lynn, but we don't know his adaptability, right? He had Rivers his whole career up until this year when he had Herbert.
And then
So
Tyrod the year in Buffalo.
Oh, true. But I'm really excited to see what Goff does in a system that will more than likely end up catering to him based on what we know about Dan Campbell's philosophies.
Yeah, so I think that it's going to be very fascinating to kind of watch the development of Jared Goff, and there also includes with the input of Mark Brunell, who's now our quarterbacks coach, being a part of that and factoring into that discussion as well in his own way. So there's some pretty interesting storylines to watch in terms of Goff and his development and progression as a quarterback as well. He is only 26 years old. He's still very young, only been in the league for 5 years, and he's only started 4.5, one of which was, well, half of which was with Jeff Fisher. Um,
The
so
bomb.
it's very interesting to kind of see where Goff is going to be going in his next few years with the Lions. So,
Yeah.
do you have anything else that you wanted to bring up in particular, Keelan?
Um, Not that I can think of. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see because pretty clearly Golf wasn't really great in his half a season under Jeff Fisher. So all of his success has been gained under the tutelage of Sean McVay and his scheme. So I'm really excited to see what he does in Anthony Lynn's system and what kind of adaptations Lynn makes to cater to Jared Goff.
Yeah, and honestly, the thing that really intrigues me the most about Goff is that he has shown throughout the course of individual games the ability to uh, be effective under multiple sets and formations. And I talked about this a lot in our two breakdowns with Chase, and how one play we get to see him in a 5 wide spread. The next play we get to see him in a 4 tight empty. The next play we get to see him with 3 tight ends. The next play we see him with 2 running backs. The next play we see him with 31 or not 31 with 11 personnel 3 wide. And and then you have your traditional ace 22 sets and under center, gun, all over the field, middle, intermediate, left, right, inside the 20, inside his own 5. We've gotten to see him have success everywhere. So it's going to be real interesting to see if he's able to kind of translate that element to his game here and how he responds to kind of getting this chip on his shoulder a little bit. Because when you come to Detroit, especially when you're coming from a team like LA, who has been in the playoffs 3 of the last 4 years that he's been their starter, and you're coming to a team in Detroit that's coming off 3 seasons of Matt Patricia football where our highest win total was 6 games, and the Lions have basically been essentially a laughingstock, to put it bluntly, for the last 5 years. There's going to be a little bit of a chip there and motivation. And for the Rams to basically say, screw you, we're going to be giving up a first round pick to trade you, at least from the Rams' perspective. We're giving up a first round pick to trade you to another team to take on your contract. You are a QB who took us to a Super Bowl, even if it's not entirely his responsibility or whatever. He is still a QB who appeared in the Super Bowl for this team. He is still a QB who, in 4 seasons, made 2 Pro Bowls with this team. Who has thrown for 4,500 yards in 2+ seasons with this team, etc., 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 who's been the captain of this team, a leader, and everything else. And now they just don't want him. They think that Stafford is going to be what he couldn't. And what he was in 2018 was a guy who beat the Kansas City Chiefs in a 100-point something slugfest of a game, which we watched earlier on the channel, by the way. So I think that this is going to be a very motivational element for Goff, for Jared. And the I don't know if you guys saw the Michael Silver story. If you haven't, it's a very good read. And even that, you really get a feel for how that relationship between Goff and McVay just isn't there. And then you kind of saw that come to fruition with the whole broken thumb thing. And I think that this is going to be very fun for Goff. Because the atmosphere here is going to be much. I don't want to say less pressure because he still has to kind of fill the shoes of staff in a way. But at the same time, it's going to be much looser. And the expectations in terms of wins and getting to a Super Bowl and stuff like that, especially in year one, really aren't going to be there. And by the time that he gets to that point, if he's still here that far down the road, he will have settled in. He'll be very comfortable with the coaching staff. He'll be very in tune with what we're doing. He'll have everything locked in and settled in, and he'll be comfortable with his receivers, and obviously Hawkinson and his offensive line. I don't see Ragnar going anywhere. I don't see Decker going anywhere. I don't see Hawkinson going anywhere. I don't see Swift going anywhere, hopefully. Within the next 3 years, I don't really see Campbell going anywhere. Unless we blow something off the charts, I don't really see Anthony Lynn going anywhere. It'd pretty much take a lot for him to get a second coaching job, I think, at this point. Better than a play calling OC job. So I think that the chance for some stability is there for him too. And
yeah, because the Rams lose offensive coordinators and QB coaches and all sorts of offensive staff seemingly every year.
And of course, we talked about the wide receiver changes. We talked about the tight end. Well, okay, the tight end room has gotten better, very much so. But there's been some tight end changes. They've had quite a bit of offensive line changes in his time there. Again, most of them improvements. But there's just a lot of year-to-year change. And even from 18 to 19, we saw a lot of changes in the system. So even though McVay wasn't necessarily there, I do think that they changed some things when Kevin O'Connell became OC. And when LaFleur left to go to Tennessee. Which also, I believe, corresponds to his job off, doesn't it?
I'm not too sure.
Because LaFleur was there. Okay, so this is LaFleur's second year in Green Bay. So LaFleur would have left after 17. So Goff had that good year in 2017 with LaFleur. And then they hired a new OC in 2018. So did they lose their OC in 2018? Or was that O'Connell?
Let me look it up really quickly.
Okay, so in 2018, they lost LaFleur and then they replaced him with the combination of Cromer and Waldron for that year.
And then they had O'Connell.
Yeah, so and then they had success with that group. And then they also lost Olsen, I believe, their quarterbacks coach that year, who went to the Raiders to be their OC.
Yep.
And after that, we saw some changes. Again. So Waldron and Cromer got promoted internally to be basically what amounts to co-OCs. And then O'Connell was brought in from Washington. Actually, this year. He was the Washington OC in 2019. So we got to see some changes this year in their offense. So, yeah, it's just been very interesting to kind of see what's all gone down with New England, or not with New England, with LA, uh, over the course of the last couple of years in terms of their coaching staff and changes that they've made.
And I think a lot of that issues were on McVay, and with the lack of really, he could have just kept promoting people in house rather than keep going from outside of the building and creating a lot of change for Jared and the rest of that offense. Clearly, they had a successful system that worked, so I'm not sure why they didn't just keep with the in-house hirings. I mean, Shane Waldron was clearly a really great fit as OC.
Yep. So, yeah, hopefully Anthony Lynn will be able to kind of take advantage of some of those elements that he's going to bring to the table in Detroit next year. And hopefully Brad Holmes is able to kind of continue building around Jared Goff in the same way that he did in his earlier years in LA. Yeah, it should be very fun to kind of watch over the course of this offseason what we do in free agency, what we do in the draft, and what we do during the regular season to help maximize and surround Jared with the talent that he needs to be successful, and more importantly, talent that we need to evaluate some of these guys that are going to be coming in or were on the roster last year, and really utilize this year as an evaluation year for the offense and the defense, and kind of see what we have and who we like, who we don't, who we want to move on from, who we want to build around, who we think are blue chip caliber guys like Hawk, I think, and who we think are very replaceable over the next 16 months. And take a look at the state of the organization and where we're going to be moving on from. So, definitely excited to see what Jared can do in Detroit and the kind of talent that he's going to bring. I personally feel like he's one of the more underrated quarterbacks based on some of the things I've heard over the last week on Twitter and Facebook, amongst other places.
Yep.
So, hopefully he'll be able to kind of show the rest of the world what he can do, and really just, I think, for Jared, if he can do well in Detroit, I really do think that would help kind of cement himself and his image and his legacy. Because if he becomes the guy to lead the Lions to a playoff appearance, even at this point, let alone a playoff win or more, I think it's going to go a long way in helping people buy in. So it's going to be very hard for people, I think, to really pinpoint Dan Campbell as the guy. And there's a lot of criticism about Dan Campbell that's already popped up from the national media. So combining the national media's distaste for Campbell and now Goff, and as well as to a lesser extent Brad Holmes, I really do wonder what the narrative is going to be if these guys find success.
Yep.
And how much credit is going to go to Jared for having success outside of McVay's shadow? Or how much credit is going to go to Dan Campbell for being the head coach of the Lions team who could actually finally win a playoff game? Or be it Brad Holmes, who honestly will more likely than not deserve a great portion of it, for building the roster that gets us to this point. Or maybe even Bob Quinn, or whoever, for getting some of the building block pieces of this team in Swift and Hawk and Decker and Ragnow, amongst others. Okuda. another one. Tracy Walker, maybe. Trey
Not
Flowers, etc.
everyone else.
So it'll be very fun and interesting to kind of see uh, how this team progresses and the direction of the team and the vision of the team moving forward, and kind of just what the future holds, I guess, very simply.
Right.
So, yeah, moral of the story, just in summary, for those of you guys who missed the film breakdowns, definitely recommend you check those out. Where we go into a lot more specifics, Jason and I do, on why exactly we like Jared Goff and what makes him a good starting caliber quarterback, as well as go over some of those games and show some tape and break that down like we do our prospect videos. But this is going to be more like podcast version, where we just kind of talk through our thoughts and opinions, and more, I guess, me rambling, but Keelan also being a part of this, I guess.
Yeah.
Even if I've
And
been talking
rambling
over
a
you.
little bit. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I've brought across some of my points and have been rambling a bit myself, so I'm not too upset with you talking a little bit more. Obviously, it's your channel, and you're clearly more of an extrovert than I am.
So yeah, for those of you guys who missed the breakdowns, definitely feel free to check those out for a little bit more detail into the actual film side of things. But yeah, do you have any other thoughts that you have on Jared?
I don't think so. I really do. I'm really happy with all in all what's going on with the trade. I think I love Matthew Stafford. I think he's a tremendous football player. I think he was tremendous for the Lions and the city of Detroit since he was drafted in 2009.
Yep.
But it was obviously time for both parties to move on, and I wish nothing but the best for Matthew. I hope he, goes out there and maybe wins the Super Bowl with the Rams.
Yep.
But it was clearly time for both parties to move on, and I'm just extremely excited to see what Jared can do in his time in Detroit and see if he can really prove to him, not only himself, but to all the doubters and haters and even just fans who are cheering him on, that he can be that franchise quarterback that can lead a team to playoff wins, and he can do it outside of the McVay kind of, I guess, if you want to call it a shadow, sure. But I think that this is going to be really crucial for Goff. Whether he stays in Detroit long term or not, I think this is really a prove it to himself and to everyone around the league and fans and everybody.
And even if he doesn't, right? Okay, so say we find Trey Lance and Goff has an above average year. Again, he's top 15 or whatever it is. Like he's been playing basically over the last 4 years. He was, I think they said 13th in passive grade or whatever. This week he has another 13th, 12th, 11th ish type season. And then next year we go out and get Trey Lance. I think that would be very good for him to kind of just rebuild that value and that reputation. It's like if we goes 13, 12, 11, whatever it is, and the Lions finish 7-9 in year one. 7 wins is the most wins that the Lions have had in a season since Caldwell. So I really do think that would be great for Goff, and it would really help be the guy that kind of gets that buy-in for the Campbell regime. He'd be remembered well here. I would say, even if, okay, maybe he doesn't take us to the playoffs or do anything fantastic or amazing. If he gives us an average season, helps us earn the buy-in, helps develop Trey Lance as the starter, and kind of, in a way, mentors him, especially with some of those more advanced elements of becoming a quarterback.
Right.
That Goff excels at and Lance does not, to put it bluntly. I think it would be very interesting to kind of see what happens to Goff's value. And maybe next year, this time, we flip him for a third rounder. And then the Stafford trade is, okay, you got a starting quarter, an above average starting quarterback for a year. You got 2/3 and 2 firsts out of the trade for
Yeah.
staff. And that's a very good deal for us. We get what we need for 2020. We get what we need, or for 2021, I mean. We get what the 3 picks for 2022 at that point, because we get the extra third rounder. Plus actually it would be 2 because we're getting the third this year. So we're getting the extra third next year. We're getting the first next year. So I really do think it would be a great way for Goff. And at that point, too, that would be a team acquiring him that would want him again.
Yeah.
And maybe commit to him and build around him. And maybe at that point, you're talking about an extension for him with his new team. We sign and trade type of thing. So, or I guess the NFL version would be a trade and sign.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because obviously in the NFL, you don't sign the contract before you trade them because of the cap hit. But, yeah, so I really do think that would be a great way to help him recoup some of his value and reputation that he's lost over the last year or two, as his relationship with McVay has kind of fallen down the hill.
Yeah.
So you got anything else for us, Keelan?
No, I think that's it.
Sweet. Well, we'll be talking a lot more about Jared Goff over the course of the next coming weeks and months, throughout the course of the offseason. We're going to be approaching the free agency period and the potential wide receiver additions there with Goff in mind. We're going to be approaching some future wide receiver videos, maybe tight end videos, maybe even running back videos, with the Jared Goff edition in mind. Offensive line, maybe not so much because we don't really need offensive linemen in Detroit. But taking a look at kind of things through the scope of the Jared Goff lens, and how we are going to be surrounding him and helping him win games in Detroit next season. So definitely feel free to come back and check out the rest of our videos, including, as I mentioned several times now, the film breakdown portion of this that we did earlier today. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this one, learned a thing or two. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this over the course of the next coming days, weeks, and months ahead. But for now, have a fantastic rest of your day, and peace out.